You're watching teleSUR English. I'm Katrina Goss. These are the headlines at this hour. After reports of a chaotic shootout in the Haitian capital late Wednesday, the police announced that they had killed 4 assassins and arrested 2 members of the commando that assassinated President Jovenel Moïse. Haiti's police chief, Leon Charles, said that the security forces were in control of the situation, even as he acknowledged that other suspected members of the hit squad remained at large. Authorities did not identify those killed or in custody and offered no evidence of their involvement in Moïse's death. Immediately after the president's death was confirmed, Interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph closed the Port-au-Prince airport and declared a state of siege for 15 days. Following this decision, the police and the army are authorized to prohibit any gathering that could, quote, encourage disorder in the country. In less than 48 hours, Joseph went from being on the verge of being relieved of office to concentrating his power in the country. On Monday, in an attempt to reach out to sectors of the opposition, Moïse had appointed Ariel Henry, a doctor who was not yet sworn in, as Prime Minister. We're watching live images from Haiti as the 2 suspects who were announced as having been arrested for the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse are being transferred. We're watching live images here. As we can see, large crowds have gathered to witness this reported transfer of the suspects in the assassination of the president. It should be recalled that in the aftermath of the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, we saw scenes of calm in the streets of Port-au-Prince. We're now seeing some reaction on the streets as these suspects are being transferred. And just to repeat the context to the images that we're seeing now, after reports of a chaotic shootout in the Haitian capital late on Wednesday, the police announced that they had killed 4 assassins and arrested 2 members of the commando that assassinated President Jovenel Moïse. Haiti's police chief, Leon Charles, said that the security forces were in control of the situation, even as he acknowledged that other suspected members of the hit squad remained at large. The authorities did not identify those killed or in custody, and they offered no evidence of their involvement of Moïse's death. Immediately after the president's death was confirmed, Interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph closed the Port-au-Prince airport and declared a state of siege for 15 days. Following this decision, the police and the army are authorized to prohibit any gathering that could, quote, encourage disorder in the country. We're watching here the live images from Port-au-Prince, where the 2 reported suspects of the killing of President Jovenel Moïse are to be transferred. We can see that crowds have gathered in the midst of these events. The magnitude of President Jovenel Moïse sparked reactions at an international scale, with many heads of state condemning the act of violence and calling for peace and dialogue in Haiti. We should recall that Haiti has seen months of instability, and there have been mass protests calling for Jovenel Moïse to stand down, as it was argued that his term of office had officially ended in February. However, he had clung on to power and was attempting to go ahead with elections in the fall, and also to hold a constitutional referendum which would seek to legitimize his ongoing presidency. And as calls for foreign intervention to protect the democratic order in Haiti emerge, the Organization of American States has pledged its determination to work for what it termed the Haitian cause. As the news of the assassination of the Haitian president emerged, Colombian President Ivan Duque, who's notorious for his administration's human rights abuses, was quick to call on the OAS to send a mission to Haiti. During an emergency meeting, OAS Secretary General Luis Almagro, who's known for his meddling in the region's internal affairs, made clear that he was ready to ensure the usual interests prevail in the Caribbean nation, as was the United States representative to the bloc. And the United Nations Security Council is set to hold an emergency meeting this Thursday to discuss Haiti in the wake of President Jovenel Moïse's assassination. Authorities claim that the attack was launched by mercenaries posing as agents of the US Drug Enforcement Administration. In a statement, members unanimously called for all parties to remain calm, exercise restraint, and avoid any acts that could contribute to further instability. Meanwhile, Ariel Henry, the newly named Prime Minister, who had yet to be installed, has insisted that he's the rightful person to lead the country in the aftermath of Moïse's killing and not the interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph. The country currently has no functioning parliament, and it's uncertain when or even whether elections that were slated for the fall will take place. For any of our viewers who are joining us now, we're watching live images from Haiti as it's reported that suspects in the killing of the President, Jovenel Moïse, which took place in the early hours of Wednesday morning, are to be transferred. It was reported on Wednesday that the President of Haiti, Jovenel Moïse, had been assassinated. According to the reports, he was killed in an attack on his home in the nation's capital, Port-au-Prince. The country's interim Prime Minister, Claude Joseph, declared a state of siege, and he convened an emergency meeting of the cabinet. The PM had said that the president's residence was stormed by a non-identified group of armed men at 1 a.m. local time. The First Lady was also seriously injured in the attack, but she's reported to be recovering. Jovenel Moïse, aged 53, had been in power since February 2017 after his predecessor Michel Martelly stepped down. And as we've said, it should be recalled that Haiti's seen months of unrest, with thousands taking to the streets to demand that Moïse leave office as his term ended in February. In the face of these popular protests, the president had been trying to impose a constitutional referendum to legitimize his presidency. The news is making headlines everywhere, while analysts are wondering what will happen next in this troubled Caribbean island. And we're now watching live images of some of the reaction on the streets of Haiti in the aftermath of this assassination. For any of our viewers who are just joining us, we're bringing you live images from the Haitian capital as there are reports that suspects in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse are to be transferred. There's been many reactions on an international level to the events in Haiti. The Caribbean community, CARICOM, made a statement condemning the assassination of the Haitian president, Jovenel Moïse. The heads of government expressed their sadness and concern regarding the condition of his wife, Martine Moïse, who was gravely wounded in the attack, but she's reported to be recovering. The community described the act as abhorrent and reprehensible. They called for the perpetrators to be apprehended and brought to justice. In accordance with its Charter of Civil Society, the Caribbean community rejected the violence and advocated for the peaceful resolution of conflicts through dialogue. CARICOM also expressed its willingness to play a leading role in facilitating a process of national dialogue and negotiation to help the Haitian people and their institutions. The bloc also called on the people of Haiti to remain calm and to overcome their differences. As a mark of respect, the national flags and the CARICOM standard would be placed at half-mast for 3 days, beginning immediately, according to that statement. For any of our viewers who are just joining us, we're watching images live from Haiti as we're hearing reports that suspects in the shooting and killing of President Jovenel Moise are to be transferred. We can see that some crowds have gathered in the streets in the wake of this news. We should recall that there were reports of chaotic shootout in the Haitian capital late on Wednesday, and the police announced that they had killed 4 assassins and arrested 2 members of the commando that assassinated President Jovenel Moise. Haiti's police chief, Leon Charles, said that the security forces were in control of the situation, even though he did acknowledge that other suspected members of the hit squad remained at large. The authorities did not identify those who killed or who were in custody, and they offered no evidence of their involvement in the president's death. Immediately after the president's death was confirmed, the interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph closed Port-au-Prince airport and declared a state of siege for 15 days. Following this decision, the police and the army are authorized to prohibit any gathering that could, quote, encourage disorder in the country. We're seeing here live images, somewhat chaotic looking images from the streets of Port-au-Prince. It remains to be seen if there will be a reaction from the security forces to this gathering. And we've been watching their live images from Haiti in the aftermath of the assassination of President Jovenel Moise. We'll, of course, continue to bring you more coverage of what's going on in Haiti